Stars. We are so grateful for a photograph of Kate Middleton with her children on British Mother's Day, though we do have questions about when that photo was taken, where the wedding and engagement ring are, and why the foliage for this time of year is so far advanced from where it should be for winter. This is just weird, says BuzzFeed News former Royals reporter on Kate Middleton, palace PR, and distrust in the media. I cannot emphasize enough how out of character it is that a royal press team went on the record in response to what is essentially gossip. Editor's note, when I realized I was in no fewer than 4 separate group chats discussing Kate Middleton's almost complete disappearance from the public eye, I turned to Ellie Hall to help me figure things out. Ellie, who's currently a freelance journalist, was senior reporter and official royal correspondent for BuzzFeed News from 2013 until the newsroom shut down in April 2023. The first part of this story is a Q&A where I spoke with Ellie about royal reporting, social media, Kensington Palace PR strategy, and how a digitally connected world has made the official press apparatus of the royal family and the royal media system somewhat obsolete, says Laura Hazard Owen. Laura, tell me a little about your reporting background and the work you did at BuzzFeed News. Ellie, I started at BuzzFeed News in January 2013 and reported for them until the newsroom shut down in April 2023. Since then, I've been freelancing and doing a bit of consulting work. I've been interested in the British monarchy and its history since I was quite young, and I happily volunteered to cover the royal family during my first weeks at the company. From that point on, I was BuzzFeed News' official royal correspondent. Although I was able to secure accreditation to cover members of the royal family in person during 3 separate official visits to the United States, BuzzFeed News was not a media outlet on the official press team's radar for a fair amount of time. The newsroom did get there eventually. I always tried to cover the royal family in a way that would interest the hardcore followers as well as casual readers, using my own observations and questions to guide my coverage. My biggest royal story was my January 2020 comparison of UK media headlines about Kate Middleton and Meghan Markle, which was actually something I'd been working on and adding examples to since February 2019. Although I had always covered the royal family, the success of that post encouraged my editors to launch a royal newsletter, The Royal Tea, and give me structured time for stories that were more analytical and more in my own voice than straight-up news posts. From that point on, I covered royal news as it broke, but I also wrote a lot of deep dives, analyses, and looks at aspects of the royal media ecosystem that nobody else was really covering. Owen, tell me a little bit about Kensington Palace press strategy. What are their strategies generally? Assume I'm an American who knows nothing about them. Like, can you email them for comment? What kinds of interactions have you had with them? Hall, one of the first things to know is that the royal family doesn't have one big press team working together to set the public narrative. The King and Queen have their press team, Buckingham Palace, and the Prince and Princess of Wales have their press team, Kensington Palace. Quote, the palace can be used for either royal household when you're referring to the royal press apparatus in a story. If Prince Harry is to be believed, there is constant infighting, one-upping, and leaking that goes on behind the scenes. Staffers for one member of the royal family will give damaging or untrue stories about another member or to the press to make their employer look better. He and his wife Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, have made allegations about this system in interviews, and he goes into it in detail in his memoir, Spare. Royal press offices rarely go on the record. As former Guardian editor-in-chief Alan Rusbridger noted in his great column that I reference all of the time in my work, it's unusually difficult to judge the reliability of royal reporting because it is a world almost devoid of open or named sources. You almost never see stories with direct attributions to royal spokespersons, which is one of the reasons why this Kate Middleton is missing saga is so interesting. A palace spokesperson has gone on the record 3 times, first in response to a Spanish media report that Kate was in a coma, then in response to the widespread social media speculation about her status, and then once again in response to William's reaction to the social media speculation. Instead of going on the record, royal press offices will give briefings and in some situations provide information to a core group of royal reporters, with the caveat that these reporters won't say that the information came from an official spokesperson. Phrases like, "This reporter understands," or "This newslet can confirm," are very common in stories about the royal family. If you follow royal reporters on Twitter, you can always tell when one of these memos is sent, because within minutes of each other, reporters will tweet a similarly worded update or clarification. We saw this happen last week when news of British financier and husband of royal family member Lady Gabriella, Thomas Kingston's unaliving was made public. Later that day, royal reporters started tweeting within minutes of each other that William's absence from the memorial service was not related to the tragedy. The fact that Kensington Palace wanted this information to get out, of course, has been deemed highly significant by some conspiracy theorists. The only method of contacting the press office that is given on the official website is a phone number that connects you to a royal family switchboard. Emailed requests for comment sent to each office's primary email address don't always receive responses, even if you've been vetted by the palace and added to the official press release listserv. Sometimes statements will only be sent to certain news outlets, something that leaves a lot of reporters scrambling to get caught up during breaking news situations. I had an interesting back and forth with someone in a royal communications office on one of those days. Royal journalists in the UK were reporting something important, citing an official statement that hadn't been posted online or sent out as a press release. I reached out to the royal press office for confirmation and received a response asking why I was contacting them when all of these other news outlets had already reported the news. Thus, I found myself writing an email explaining that journalists are supposed to independently fact-check information they don't receive firsthand, which was a weird experience. The big question about the saga of Kate's disappearance and every royal controversy is how much control the palace press offices have over the media. Royal press offices hold a fair amount of control because they act as gatekeepers to the members of the royal family. We know that they at least attempt to wield influence behind the scenes. Royal reporters have confirmed that the palace press offices have tried to kill false and true stories before publication. We also know that on at least one occasion, the palace has preemptively reached out to media outlets to warn them off reporting a particular story. We also learned this week that someone from Kensington Palace reached out to an airline to get them to delete a rude tweet about William when a rumor about him was trending on Twitter. We know that the palace has actively concealed royal news from the press and reportedly even lied to reporters about issues concerning the health of royal family members. In November 2020, we learned that William had contracted a severe case of COVID-19 in April 2020. At the time, veteran royal reporter Robert Jobson tweeted about Kensington Palace's appalling decision to lie about the prince's health, writing, "KP were asked several times by the media whether Prince William had contracted the virus and were told categorically no." TMZ's recent publication of the paparazzi photo of Kate and her mother driving in Windsor has added a new dimension to the media-controlled discussion. Kensington Palace has let it be known that the photos were unauthorized and no UK media outlets have run the images.